The train whistle shrieked through the empty prairie as Zuzanna Molnár clutched her single valise, knuckles white with anxiety. The year was 1873, and after traveling thousands of miles from her native Hungary, she had finally reached Silver Creek, Wyoming territory, only to face immediate rejection from the man who had promised to marry her. "Your letters never mentioned that." "Accent," Arthur Wilcox said with a sneer, looking her up and down as they stood on the dusty platform. "I can barely understand a word you're saying. This won't work." Zuzanna felt her heart plummet. "Please, I learn quick. I can know," he cut her off, stepping backward. "The arrangement is off. You'll have to find your way back to wherever you came from." Without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving her alone at the train station as the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly. Tears welled in her eyes as she watched his retreating back. 3 months of correspondence, her life savings spent on passage, and now this. Zuzanna sank onto her trunk, the enormity of her situation washing over her. She was 22 years old, alone in a foreign land, with barely enough money for a week's lodging. "Excuse me, miss, you all right?" The voice was deep and gentle. Zuzanna looked up to see a tall man standing before her, hat in hand. His skin was tanned from the sun, his eyes a startling blue against his weathered face. He wore simple clothes, dusty trousers, a worn cotton shirt, and a leather vest that had seen better days. "I am fine," she managed, quickly wiping her tears. "Forgive me for saying so, but you don't look fine." He knelt down to her level. "Name's Finn Nolan. I run the Sundown Ranch just outside of town." "Zuzanna Molnár," she replied, her name rolling off her tongue with the distinctive cadence of her homeland. Finn smiled. "That's a mighty pretty name. Where are you from, Miss Molnár?" "Hungary. I come as—" She paused, shame coloring her cheeks. "I was to be bride, but he does not want me now." "My English, it is not good enough." Finn's expression darkened as he glanced in the direction Arthur had disappeared. "That'd be Arthur Wilcox, I reckon. Always was a fool." He stood up straight, replacing his hat. "Well, Miss Molnár, if you need a place to stay while you figure things out, my sister runs the boarding house in town. Reasonable rates, clean rooms." Zuzanna nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Mr. Nolan." As he helped her with her trunk, Finn tilted his head. "You know, if you don't mind me saying so, your words sound like music to me. Never heard anything quite like it." For the first time since stepping off the train, Zuzanna smiled. The Silver Creek boarding house was a modest 2-story building with a wide porch and clean, if threadbare, furnishings. Finn's sister, Sarah, was a plump woman with the same striking blue eyes as her brother, and a no-nonsense attitude that Zuzanna found comforting. "My brother says you need a place to stay," Sarah said after introductions were made. "I've got a small room at the back. It's not fancy, but it's clean and quiet." "I do not have much money," Zuzanna admitted. Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "We can work something out. Can you cook, clean?" "I could use some help around here." Relief flooded through Zuzanna. "Yes, I cook very well, Hungarian food, but I learn American too." "Perfect. You can help with the meals and housekeeping in exchange for your room and a small wage." Sarah showed her to a tiny but tidy room at the back of the house. "Get settled in. Dinner's at 6. After Sarah left, Zuzanna sat on the narrow bed and allowed herself a moment of reflection. This wasn't what she had planned, but at least she had a roof over her head and a chance to earn her keep. She unpacked her few belongings, 3 dresses, undergarments, a small wooden box containing her mother's amber necklace, and a worn photograph of her parents standing in front of their small farmhouse in the Hungarian countryside. They had died within months of each other. 2 years ago, her father from pneumonia, her mother from what the doctor called a broken heart. With no siblings and few prospects in her village, Zuzanna had answered an advertisement in a Budapest newspaper for American men seeking wives. Arthur's letters had been kind, if a bit formal. He had described his mercantile business in Silver Creek, the comfortable home he owned, and his desire for a wife who could help manage his household and perhaps give him children. Zuzanna had responded honestly about her background as a farmer's daughter, her basic education, and her willingness to work hard and learn. They had corresponded for 3 months before she agreed to come to America. Not once had he mentioned concerns about her accent or her grasp of English. She had been honest about her limited language skills, though she had studied diligently from an English primer during the long journey across the ocean and then by rail across the vast American continent. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. It was Finn, hat in hand once again. "Just wanted to make sure you were settling in all right," he said, standing awkwardly in the doorway. "Yes, your sister is very kind, thank you. Well, I'll be heading back to the ranch now, but I come into town every few days for supplies." He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "If you need anything, just let Sarah know." Zuzanna nodded. "Mr. Nolan, Finn, please. Finn, why you help me? You do not know me." He considered her question for a moment. "Out here, we help folks in need. It's how we survive." His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "Besides, I know what it's like to be a stranger in a new place. My pa brought us over from Ireland when I was just a boy. People weren't always kind about the way we talked either." With that, he tipped his hat and left. Zuzanna stared at the empty doorway for a long moment, feeling, for the first time that day, that perhaps America wasn't entirely unwelcoming after all. The next morning, Zuzanna woke before dawn, a habit from her years on her parents' farm. She dressed quickly in her plainest dress and made her way to the kitchen, where she found Sarah already at work, kneading dough for the day's bread. "You're an early riser," Sarah observed, not unkindly. "On farm, we always rise with sun," Zuzanna explained. "What can I do to help?" Sarah pointed to a basket of potatoes. "Those need peeling for breakfast. We've got 8 boarders at present, all men working on the new railroad spur. They eat like horses." Zuzanna set to work, and soon the kitchen was filled with the aroma of frying bacon, fresh bread, and strong coffee. When the boarders came downstairs for breakfast, they regarded Zuzanna with curious glances but polite nods. "This here's Zuzanna," Sarah explained as she served heaping plates of food. "She'll be helping me run the place, so mind your manners." The men mumbled greetings, some tipping their hats. One older gentleman with a gray-streaked beard smiled warmly. "Welcome to Silver Creek, miss. Don't let the likes of Arthur Wilcox color your view of our town. News travels fast around here," he added, seeing her surprise. "Thank you," Zuzanna replied, carefully pronouncing each syllable. Over the next few days, Zuzanna fell into a routine. She rose early to help with breakfast, spent the morning cleaning rooms and doing laundry, assisted with the midday meal, and then had a few hours in the afternoon to herself before helping with dinner. During those free hours, she often sat on the back porch with an English primer that Sarah had found for her, practicing her pronunciation and expanding her vocabulary. On her 4th day in Silver Creek, Zuzanna was hanging laundry in the backyard when she heard the gate open. Finn stood there, leading his horse by the reins. "Afternoon, Miss Molnár," he said, removing his hat. "Just stopped by to check how you're getting on. I am well, thank you. Your sister is very kind. She says you're a hard worker, says the boarders are mighty pleased with your cooking too." Zuzanna smiled, pleased by the compliment. "I make Gulia's last night Hungarian stew. They eat 2 bowls each." Finn leaned against the fence. "I might have to try that myself sometime." He hesitated, then added, "I was wondering if you might like to see a bit of the town." "Must be hard being cooped up here all day." Zuzanna glanced at the remaining laundry. "I should finish, go on," Sarah called from the back door, startling them both. "The sheets can wait. It's a fine day for a walk." Zuzanna quickly pinned the last of the shirts to the line and untied her apron. "I will get my shawl." Silver Creek was a small but growing town. The main street boasted a general store, a bank, a saloon, a small church, and various other businesses. As they walked, Finn pointed out landmarks and introduced her to people they passed. Everyone was polite, though Zuzanna noticed curious glances and occasional whispers. Is that her, Wilcox's mail-order bride? Poor thing, left high and dry. Heard she can barely speak English. Zuzanna kept her head high, though her cheeks burned with embarrassment. Don't pay them any mind, Finn said quietly. Folks will talk, but they'll forget about it soon enough when something more interesting comes along. They paused outside the general store, and Zuzanna's heart sank when she saw Arthur Wilcox emerge with a well-dressed woman on his arm. He froze when he spotted Zuzanna, then quickly looked away, hurrying the woman in the opposite direction. That's Clara Prescott, Finn explained, his voice tight. Her father owns the bank. Wilcox has been courting her for months. He shook his head in disgust. Must have decided a banker's daughter was a better match than a Hungarian farmer's daughter, no matter what he promised in those letters. Zuzanna felt a strange mixture of hurt and relief. At least now she understood why he had been so quick to reject her. It wasn't just her accent, he had already set his sights elsewhere. It is better this way, she said softly. Marriage should have love, not just convenience. Finn studied her face. You're a remarkable woman, Zuzanna Molnár. Most would be cursing his name. She shrugged. What good would that do? I must look forward, not back. They continued their walk, stopping at the small church where Finn introduced her to Pastor Thomas, a kind-faced man who welcomed her warmly and invited her to Sunday services. At the dressmaker's shop, the proprietress, Mrs. Jenkins, engaged Zuzanna in conversation about Hungarian traditional clothing and offered her occasional sewing work if she was interested. By the time they returned to the boarding house, Zuzanna's spirits had lifted considerably. Silver Creek might not be the home she had imagined, but perhaps it could become home nevertheless. Thank you for the tour, she said as they reached the front porch. Finn replaced his hat, the late afternoon sun catching in his blue eyes. My pleasure. I'll be back in town on Saturday. Perhaps you'd join me for supper at the hotel restaurant. They serve a decent meal. Zuzanna hesitated, aware of Sarah watching from the window with undisguised interest. I would like that. As Finn rode away, Sarah joined her on the porch. My brother doesn't usually take such an interest in newcomers, she said with a knowing smile. We are just friends, Zuzanna insisted, though she couldn't deny the pleasant warmth that spread through her chest when Finn smiled at her. Of course, Sarah replied, not sounding convinced in the slightest. Now come help me with dinner. Those railroad men will be hungry as wolves when they get back. That night, as Zuzanna lay in bed, she found herself thinking about Finn Nolan. He was nothing like what she had expected from an American cowboy. There was a gentleness to him that contrasted with his rugged appearance and a thoughtfulness in his conversation that surprised her. When he listened to her speak, he never seemed impatient or confused by her accent. Instead, he appeared genuinely interested in what she had to say. For the first time since arriving in America, Zuzanna fell asleep with a smile on her face. The next few days passed quickly. Zuzanna threw herself into her work at the boarding house, determined to earn her keep and save what she could from the small wage Sarah paid her. She also continued her English studies, practicing with Sarah and the boarders, who good-naturedly corrected her pronunciation and taught her American expressions. On Saturday morning, Zuzanna was sweeping the front porch when she noticed a commotion down the street. A wagon had overturned, spilling lumber across the road. Without thinking, she put down her broom and hurried to help. Several men were already lifting the wagon while others gathered the scattered boards. Zuzanna began collecting smaller pieces of wood, stacking them neatly at the roadside. As she worked, she became aware of someone watching her. Looking up, she saw Arthur Wilcox standing nearby, an unreadable expression on his face. Miss Molnár, he said stiffly, I see you're still in town. Yes, she replied simply, continuing her task. He cleared his throat. I hope you found suitable arrangements. I work at boarding house now. Mrs. Nolan has been very kind. Arthur shifted uncomfortably. Look, I want to explain about what happened. No need, Zuzanna interrupted, standing up straight and meeting his gaze directly. You made your choice. I make mine. We both move forward. He blinked, clearly surprised by her composed response. Before he could reply, Finn appeared beside them, his expression hard as he looked at Arthur. "Everything all right here?" he asked, his question directed at Zuzanna. "Yes, just helping with wagon," she answered, gesturing to the now righted vehicle. Finn nodded, then turned to Arthur. "Wilcox." "Nolan." Arthur's tone was equally curt. The tension between the men was palpable. "If you'll excuse us," Finn said, placing a gentle hand on Zuzanna's elbow, "we have plans this evening." As they walked away, Zuzanna glanced up at Finn. "You do not like him." Finn's jaw was tight. "Never have, even less now after how he treated you." "It is in past," Zuzanna said firmly. "Tonight, we enjoy dinner, yes." Finn's expression softened. "Yes, madam." The hotel restaurant was the fanciest establishment in Silver Creek, with tablecloths and proper china instead of the usual tin plates used in the saloon. Zuzanna wore her best dress, a deep blue cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs, and arranged her dark hair in a simple but elegant knot at the nape of her neck. When Finn arrived to escort her, he was similarly dressed in his Sunday best, a clean white shirt, dark trousers, and a new-looking vest. He had trimmed his beard and slicked back his hair, and Zuzanna couldn't help but notice how handsome he looked. "You look beautiful," he said as she came down the stairs. "Thank you. You are very handsome tonight." Sarah, watching from the parlor, made no attempt to hide her approval. "Don't keep her out too late, Finn, and mind your manners." "Yes, Sarah," he replied with the long-suffering tone of a younger brother accustomed to his sister's fussing. The restaurant was busy, but Finn had reserved a table by the window. As they were seated, Zuzanna noticed several people watching them, including Arthur and Clara dining across the room. Arthur quickly looked away when he caught her eye. "Ignore them," Finn said quietly. "People will always talk." "It does not bother me," Zuzanna replied, and she was surprised to realize it was true. The pain of Arthur's rejection had faded remarkably quickly. Their meal was pleasant, with Finn asking about her life in Hungary and sharing stories of his own childhood in Ireland and later in America. His family had immigrated when he was 10, settling first in Boston before his father heard about opportunities out west. They had traveled by wagon train to Wyoming when Finn was 15, and his father had established Sundown Ranch with just 20 head of cattle and a run-down cabin. "Pa died 5 years ago," Finn explained. "Left the ranch to me and Sarah, but she preferred town life. She used her share to buy the boarding house, and I've been running the ranch ever since. Up to 200 head now, and the cabin's a proper house." "You have done well," Zuzanna observed. "Your father would be proud." Finn smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. "I hope so." "What about your family?" Zuzanna told him about her parents' farm, her mother's talent for embroidery, her father's skill with horses. She described the rolling hills of her homeland, the traditional celebrations in her village, the life she had left behind. "I miss them very much," she admitted. "But there was nothing for me there after they died. No family, no prospects." "So you answered an advertisement," Finn said, not as a judgment but as a simple statement of fact. Zuzanna nodded. "Many girls from my village do this. America is land of opportunity, they say. New life." "And has it been? A new life?" She considered the question seriously. "Not what I expected, but yes, a new beginning. I am learning, growing stronger." As they finished their meal, a small band set up in the corner of the restaurant, and several couples moved to a cleared area to dance. "Would you like to?" Finn asked, nodding toward the dancers. Zuzanna hesitated. "I do not know American dances. It's not so different, I'll show you." He led her to the dance floor and placed one hand respectfully at her waist, taking her hand with the other. "Just follow my lead." The music was a simple waltz, and after a few stumbling steps, Zuzanna found the rhythm. Finn was a surprisingly graceful dancer for such a tall man, and he guided her gently around the floor, murmuring encouragement when she faltered. "You see, you're a natural," he said as they completed a turn. Zuzanna laughed, feeling lighter than she had in months. It is the teacher who is good. As they danced, she became aware of the other couples watching them, some with smiles, others with curious expressions. Arthur and Clara had also joined the dancers, and when they passed close by, Zuzanna caught Clara's calculating gaze. "People watch us," she whispered to Finn. "Let them," he replied, his blue eyes fixed on hers. "All I see is you." The simple statement sent a flutter through Zuzanna's chest. For a moment, it felt as though they were the only two people in the room, moving together in perfect harmony as the music swelled around them. When the song ended, Finn reluctantly released her. "Would you like to continue, or shall we call it an evening? Perhaps one more dance." Zuzanna suggested, not quite ready for the night to end. They danced twice more before Finn escorted her back to the boarding house. The night air was cool, and he draped his jacket over her shoulders as they walked. "I had a wonderful time," Zuzanna said as they reached the porch. "So did I." Finn hesitated, then added, "I'd like to see you again, Zuzanna, not just when I come to town for supplies, but properly, if you'd be agreeable." In the soft glow of the porch lantern, his expression was earnest, almost vulnerable. Zuzanna felt a warmth spread through her that had nothing to do with his jacket around her shoulders. "I would like that very much," she replied. His smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Good, that's good." He took a step back, suddenly shy. "I should let you get some rest." "Good night, Zuzanna." "Good night, Finn." She watched him walk away, his tall figure silhouetted against the starlit sky before turning to enter the boarding house. Sarah was waiting in the parlor, pretending to read but obviously eager for details. "Well," she prompted as Zuzanna hung up Finn's jacket. "It was a lovely evening," Zuzanna replied, unable to keep the smile from her face. Sarah nodded approvingly. "I haven't seen my brother look at anyone the way he looks at you. Not ever." Zuzanna felt her cheeks warm. "We are just beginning to know each other." "Sometimes that's all it takes," Sarah said with a knowing smile. "Now get some sleep. Sunday breakfast is always busy." In the days that followed, Silver Creek buzzed with talk of Finn Nolan and the Hungarian mail-order bride. Some approved of the match, praising Finn for his kindness in helping a woman in need. Others speculated about his motives or questioned whether a foreigner could adapt to life on a Wyoming ranch. Zuzanna paid the gossip little mind. She continued her work at the boarding house, her English improving daily through constant practice. Twice a week, Finn came to town, always finding a reason to stop by the boarding house. Sometimes they walked together through town, other times they simply sat on the porch talking as the sun set. 3 weeks after their dinner at the hotel, Finn invited her to visit Sundown Ranch. "Sunday after church," he suggested. "I could pick you up in the wagon, show you around the place, have dinner. Sarah's welcome to come too," he added hastily, mindful of propriety. "I would like that," Zuzanna replied, "but perhaps Sarah has other plans." She glanced meaningfully at her employer, who had been shamelessly eavesdropping from the doorway. Sarah smiled innocently. "Oh, I couldn't possibly. Pastor Thomas has asked me to help organize the church social." "You two go on without me." Finn's expression was a mixture of relief and nervousness. "I'll come by after the service then." Sunday dawned clear and warm. Zuzanna wore her second-best dress to church, a light green cotton that Sarah had helped her alter to better fit her slender frame. The service was pleasant, with Pastor Thomas delivering a sermon on community and acceptance that seemed particularly pointed when his gaze fell on certain members of the congregation who had been less than welcoming to Zuzanna. After the service, Finn waited outside with his wagon, freshly washed and lined with clean straw for comfort. He helped Zuzanna up to the seat and climbed up beside her, keenly aware of the curious eyes watching them depart. "It's about 5 miles to the ranch," he explained as they left town behind. "Not far, but far enough to feel like a different world sometimes." The landscape opened up around them, rolling prairie dotted with sagebrush, distant hills rising blue against the horizon. and the occasional stand of cottonwood trees marking the presence of water. Zuzanna took it all in, fascinated by the vastness so different from the close, cultivated fields of her homeland. "It is beautiful," she said. "So much space, so much sky." Finn nodded in understanding. "Took me a while to get used to it after Boston, but now I can't imagine living anywhere else." As they crested a small rise, sundown ranch came into view. A sturdy log house stood on a gentle slope, with a barn, corral, and several outbuildings nearby. A small creek wound through the property, lined with cottonwoods and willows. Cattle grazed in the distance, dark spots against the golden grass. "It's not much compared to some of the big spreads," Finn said, a note of pride nonetheless evident in his voice, "but it's mine. Every log, every fence post, I either put it there myself or earn the money to pay someone to do it." "It is wonderful," Zuzanna said sincerely. "A true home." Finn's hand briefly covered hers on the seat between them. "I'm glad you think so." As they approached the house, a dog came bounding out to meet them, a black and white border collie who barked enthusiastically until Finn called out, "Settle down, Jack. He's harmless," Finn assured Zuzanna as he helped her down from the wagon. "Best cattle dog in the territory, but he thinks everyone's come specifically to throw sticks for him." As if to prove the point, Jack promptly dropped a well-chewed piece of wood at Zuzanna's feet, looking up expectantly. Laughing, she picked it up and tossed it toward the creek. Jack took off like a shot, returning moments later with the stick and dropping it again for another throw. "You've made a friend for life," Finn observed as he tied up the horses. "Come on, I'll show you around." The house was simple but well built, with a large main room that served as both kitchen and living area, and two smaller rooms off to one side. The furniture was mostly handmade but solid, with a few touches curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt on the sofa that Finn attributed to Sarah's influence. "She comes out every few months to make sure I'm not living like a complete savage," he explained with a grin. After showing her the house, Finn took Zuzanna around the rest of the property. She was particularly interested in the vegetable garden, which was thriving but could, she noted, benefit from a few improvements. "In Hungary, we plant marigolds between vegetables," she explained. "Keeps away bugs." "Is that so?" Finn looked at the garden with new eyes. "Well, you'll have to show me sometime." The simple comment, the assumption that there would be future visits, future opportunities for her to share her knowledge, warmed Zuzanna deeply. They visited the barn, where Finn introduced her to his horses and explained his breeding program. Zuzanna, who had grown up around farm animals, asked intelligent questions that clearly impressed him. "You know your livestock," he remarked as they headed back to the house for dinner. "My father raised horses, small, strong Hungarian breeds. I helped since I was a little girl." Inside, Finn proved to be a surprisingly competent cook, preparing a simple but delicious meal of venison stew, biscuits, and apple pie that he admitted Sarah had sent along. "I can manage most things," he said as they ate at the sturdy table, "but pastry defeats me every time." As the afternoon stretched into evening, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. Jack lay at their feet, content after an afternoon of fetching sticks and receiving scratches. "I should get you back soon," Finn said reluctantly as dusk began to fall. "Sarah will have my hide if I keep you out after dark." Zuzanna nodded, though she was equally reluctant to end the day. "Thank you for showing me your home. It is a special place." "It's been better today for having you in it," Finn replied quietly. Something in his tone made Zuzanna turn to look at him. His blue eyes were serious, his expression open and vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "Zuzanna," he began, then hesitated. "I know you came to America with certain expectations, plans that didn't work out, and I know we haven't known each other long." He took a deep breath, "but I find myself thinking about you all the time. When I'm out with the herd, when I'm fixing fence, when I'm sitting right here on this porch, I'm thinking about your smile, your laugh, the way you face challenges head on. He reached out and gently took her hand. "I'm not asking for promises yet, just a chance. A chance to see if what I'm feeling might be something you could feel too in time." Zuzanna looked down at their joined hands, then back up at his earnest face. In the few weeks she had known Finn Nolan, he had shown her more genuine kindness and respect than Arthur Wilcox had in months of correspondence. When Finn looked at her, he truly saw her not just a foreign bride or a convenient housekeeper, but a woman with thoughts and feelings and value. "I think," she said carefully, "that I already feel something good, something that could grow." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. "That's enough for me, for now." The drive back to town was quiet but comfortable, both of them content to simply be in each other's company as the stars emerged above them. When they reached the boarding house, Finn helped Zuzanna down from the wagon, holding her hand perhaps a moment longer than necessary. "I'll be in town on Wednesday," he said. "May I call on you?" "I would like that," she replied. He hesitated, then leaned down and placed a gentle, brief kiss on her cheek. "Good night, Zuzanna. Good night, Finn." She watched him drive away, her hand rising to touch the spot where his lips had been, a smile lingering on her face as she turned to go inside. Sarah was waiting, of course, but took one look at Zuzanna's expression and simply said, "Had a nice day, did you?" "Very nice," Zuzanna replied, unable to keep the happiness from her voice. Over the next few weeks, Finn courted Zuzanna properly. He called at the boarding house twice a week, bringing small gifts, wildflowers, a ribbon for her hair, a book to help with her English. They walked together, attended church together, and once took a picnic to a pretty spot by the creek outside town. Zuzanna continued to work hard at the boarding house, saving her wages and improving her English daily. Mrs. Jenkins from the dressmaker's shop made good on her offer of occasional sewing work, praising Zuzanna's fine stitching and eye for detail. Pastor Thomas invited her to help with the Sunday school, where her accent became an asset rather than a liability, as the children delighted in learning words in Hungarian. Gradually, the townspeople's attitudes toward her shifted. Where once there had been whispers and sidelong glances, there were now friendly greetings and invitations to social gatherings. Even Clara Prescott nodded politely when they passed on the street, though Arthur still avoided direct contact. 6 weeks after their first dinner together, Finn invited Zuzanna to attend the town's Founders' Day celebration as his guest. It was Silver Creek's biggest annual event, with a parade, contests, dancing, and a community picnic. "Everyone will be there," he said. "Thought it might be nice to spend the day together." The day of the celebration dawned sunny and warm. Zuzanna wore a new dress that she and Mrs. Jenkins had made together, a pretty floral print with a modest bustle and lace trim that was fashionable without being too fancy for a small town celebration. Finn arrived promptly at 9, looking handsome in a clean white shirt and his best vest. His eyes widened appreciatively when he saw Zuzanna. "You look beautiful," he said simply. The town square was decorated with bunting and flags. Stalls had been set up selling food, drinks, and various handcrafted items. Children ran about playing games, and a band was setting up on a small platform for later dancing. As they walked through the festivities, Zuzanna was touched by how many people greeted her by name, engaging her in conversation and introducing her to family members. She caught sight of Arthur and Clara near the lemonade stand, but felt only a slight twinge of what might have been. Any lingering hurt over his rejection had been replaced by gratitude that his actions had ultimately led her to Finn. They watched the parade, cheered for the contestants in the various competitions, and enjoyed a picnic lunch under the shade of a large oak tree. Throughout the day, Finn stayed close by her side, his hand occasionally finding hers, his smile warming her more than the summer sun. As evening approached, lanterns were lit around the square and the band began to play. Couples moved to the wooden dance floor that had been laid out for the occasion. "May I have this dance?" Finn asked, extending his hand with a slight bow. Zuzanna smiled, taking his hand. "You may have all my dances." They joined the other couples on the floor, moving together with the easy familiarity that had developed between them. As they danced, Zuzanna noticed the approving glances from those around them, including Sarah, who was dancing with the town doctor and looking quite pleased about it. During a break in the music, Finn led Zuzanna away from the crowd, toward a quiet spot near the church. The sounds of the celebration faded slightly as they walked, replaced by the gentle chirping of crickets and the distant laughter of children. "I've been wanting to talk to you about something," Finn said, his voice unusually serious. Zuzanna looked up at him questioningly. "Is something wrong?" "No, not at all." He took both her hands in his. "Zuzanna, these past weeks have been the happiest of my life. Getting to know you, seeing your strength and kindness, hearing your laugh, it's changed everything for me." He took a deep breath. "I know it hasn't been long. Some might say it's too soon, but I've never been more certain of anything in my life." He released one of her hands to reach into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. "I love you, Zuzanna Molnár. Your accent, your courage, your heart, everything about you. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple but lovely ring, a small pearl set in gold. "It was my mother's," he explained. "Sarah's been keeping it for me all these years." Zuzanna stared at the ring, then at Finn's hopeful face. When she had first come to America, she had expected a marriage of convenience, a practical arrangement with a man she barely knew. Instead, she had found something far more precious, a man who valued her for exactly who she was, who looked at her with love in his eyes and spoke her name as though it were a cherished song. "Yes," she whispered, tears of joy filling her eyes. "Yes, I will marry you, Finn Nolan." His face lit up with happiness as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he cupped her face gently in his hands and kissed her their first true kiss, sweet and tender and full of promise. When they returned to the dance floor, Sarah took one look at them and rushed over, her eyes immediately finding the ring on Zuzanna's finger. "Finally," she exclaimed, hugging them both. "I was beginning to think he'd never work up the courage." Word spread quickly through the celebration. Congratulations poured in from all sides, with many of the townspeople expressing genuine delight at the match. Even Pastor Thomas made his way over to offer his blessing and suggest a date for the ceremony. As the evening wore on, Zuzanna found herself approached by Clara Prescott, who was alone for the moment, Arthur having gone to fetch refreshments. "Miss Molnár," Clara said, her tone carefully neutral. "I understand congratulations are in order." "Thank you," Zuzanna replied simply. Clara hesitated, then added, "I want you to know, Arthur never told me about your arrangement until after you arrived. I wouldn't have. That is to say, I don't approve of how he handled matters." Zuzanna studied the other woman's face, seeing a flicker of genuine regret there. "It is in past," she said gently. "Perhaps it was for best for all of us." Clara nodded, looking relieved. "Perhaps it was. I wish you happiness, Miss Molnár." "And I wish same for you," Zuzanna replied, surprised to find she meant it. When Finn returned to her side, he raised an eyebrow at Clara's retreating back. "Everything all right?" "Yes," Zuzanna said, slipping her arm through his. "Everything is perfect." They were married 3 weeks later in the Silver Creek Church, with Sarah as Zuzanna's attendant and Dr. Thompson, who had been courting Sarah since the Founders' Day celebration, standing up for Finn. The small church was filled to capacity with well-wishers, the townspeople having fully embraced the romance between the Irish-American rancher and the Hungarian immigrant. Zuzanna wore a simple white dress that she and Mrs. Jenkins had worked on together, with sprigs of wildflowers in her dark hair instead of a veil. Finn could scarcely take his eyes off her as she walked down the aisle toward him, his expression one of wonder and deep love. Pastor Thomas conducted the ceremony with warmth and sincerity. When it came time for their vows, Finn spoke clearly and confidently, promising to love, honor, and cherish Zuzanna for all his days. When it was Zuzanna's turn, her accent was still present, but her English much improved as she made the same promises in return. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," Pastor Thomas declared. "You may kiss your bride." The kiss they shared was sweet and tender, but with an undercurrent of passion that brought a blush to Zuzanna's cheeks and caused Sarah to clear her throat meaningfully. The celebration afterward was held at the boarding house, which Sarah had decorated festively for the occasion. There was music and dancing, abundant food prepared by Zuzanna's fellow boarders, and enough goodwill to fill the house to overflowing. As evening approached, Finn and Zuzanna prepared to depart for Sundown Ranch, their home now. Sarah embraced Zuzanna tightly. "You'll always have a place here if you need it," she said, "but I hope you'll be very happy at the ranch." "I will miss working with you," Zuzanna replied truthfully, "but I will visit often, and perhaps you will visit us. Bring Dr. Thompson," Sarah blushed prettily. "Perhaps I will." As they drove away from town in Finn's wagon, decorated with ribbons and flowers by the townspeople, Zuzanna leaned against her husband's shoulder, contentment washing over her. "Happy, Mrs. Nolan?" Finn asked, placing a kiss on the top of her head. "Very happy," she replied, the words flowing more naturally now after months of practice. "Though I will miss Sarah and the others. We'll come to town often," Finn promised, "and they'll visit us, but I'm looking forward to having you all to myself for a while." The ranch house had been transformed in preparation for their arrival. Fresh curtains hung at the windows, a new quilt adorned the bed, and vases of wildflowers brightened every room. Jack greeted them enthusiastically, dancing around Zuzanna's skirts as though welcoming her home. That night, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their bedroom, Finn traced gentle fingers along Zuzanna's cheek. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," he murmured. "When I heard you speak that first day at the station, your words sounded like music to me, still do." Zuzanna smiled in the darkness. "And you were first person to truly listen." "I'll always listen," he promised, drawing her closer. "Always." The seasons changed, and Zuzanna adapted to life as a rancher's wife with determination and grace. She expanded the vegetable garden, planting Hungarian varieties alongside American ones, and introducing the marigolds she had mentioned to Finn. She learned to ride Western style, accompanying Finn on shorter cattle drives and proving herself as capable on horseback as she had been in her father's stables. Her English continued to improve, though she never lost her accent, nor did Finn want her to. "It's part of who you are," he said when she expressed frustration over a particularly difficult pronunciation. "I'd miss it if it was gone." In the evenings, she taught him words and phrases in Hungarian, laughing at his attempts to wrap his tongue around the unfamiliar sounds. "Not bad," she would say encouragingly, "but not good either." They visited town regularly, maintaining close ties with Sarah, who was now officially courting Dr. Thompson. Zuzanna also kept up her friendship with Mrs. Jenkins, occasionally helping with special sewing projects and learning American quilting techniques in return. As winter approached, bringing with it shorter days and a peaceful hush to the prairie, Zuzanna discovered she was expecting a child. When she shared the news with Finn, his joy was boundless. He lifted her in his arms and spun her around the kitchen, then set her down hastily, suddenly concerned he might have jostled her. "I'm not made of glass," she laughed, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "Our baby is strong, like mother, like father." "Our baby," he repeated wonderingly. "A little person who'll be half you, half me. And all American," Zuzanna added with a smile, "but will know Hungarian lullabies and Irish stories." They shared the news with Sarah on their next trip to town, and she immediately began planning the baby's layette and discussing names with an enthusiasm that matched their own. Throughout the winter, as Zuzanna's body changed to accommodate the growing life within, Finn was attentive and protective without being overbearing. He understood her need to remain active and useful, but gently encouraged her to rest when she needed it and took on extra tasks without being asked. Spring arrived with a burst of wildflowers across the prairie, and the busy season of calving on the ranch. Zuzanna, now in her 7th month, supervised the planting of the garden from a comfortable chair Finn had placed in the shade, giving instructions to the young ranch hand they had hired to help with the heavier work. In late May, just as the last of the calves were being branded, Zuzanna went into labor. Sarah and Dr. Thompson arrived quickly from town, and after several hours of effort, Zuzanna gave birth to a healthy baby girl with her father's blue eyes and a tuft of dark hair like her mother's. "Eva," Zuzanna whispered as she cradled her daughter for the first time. "It means life in Hungarian." "Eva Nolan," Finn said, his voice thick with emotion as he gazed at his wife and child. "It's perfect." As summer turned to fall, and fall to winter again, the Nolan family settled into a rhythm of ranch life punctuated by visits to town and occasional social gatherings. Eva grew quickly, a happy, curious child who crawled early and was soon toddling after Jack with determined steps. On Eva's first birthday, they hosted a small celebration at the ranch. Sarah and Dr. Thompson came, now engaged to be married, along with Pastor Thomas, Mrs. Jenkins, and several other friends from town. Even Arthur and Clara Wilcox attended, their own infant son a reminder that life had indeed worked out as it should for all concerned. As Zuzanna watched Finn swing their daughter in the air, Eva's laughter ringing out across the yard, she felt a deep contentment settle in her heart. America had not given her the life she had expected when she first stepped off that train 2 years ago. It had given her something far better: a true home, a loving husband, a beautiful child, and a community that had, in the end, welcomed her with open arms. That evening, after the guests had departed and Eva was asleep in her crib, Finn and Zuzanna sat on the porch, watching the sunset as they had so many times before. He draped his arm around her shoulders, drawing her close against the autumn chill. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. "About coming to America, about how things turned out." Zuzanna thought about the question seriously, as was her way. "No," she said finally. "No regrets. Every step of journey brought me here, to you, to Eva, to this life we build together." She looked up at him, her dark eyes reflecting the last golden rays of the setting sun. "This is where I belong." Finn leaned down to kiss her, his lips gentle against hers. "Yes, it is. And I thank God every day that Arthur Wilcox was fool enough to let you go, and that I was smart enough to recognize what he couldn't see." "What was that?" she asked, though she knew the answer. "That your words sound like music," he replied, "but your heart sings even louder." As the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, they remained on the porch, wrapped in each other's arms, the sound of the prairie wind and their daughter's soft breathing from the open window, creating a melody that was uniquely theirs: a song of home, of belonging, of a love that had bridged continents and cultures to bloom in the vast openness of the American West. 2 years later, Zuzanna gave birth to their second child, a son they named Michael after Finn's father. Eva, now 3, took her role as big sister very seriously, helping her mother in small ways and reading stories to the baby from her picture books. The ranch prospered under Finn's management, with Zuzanna contributing her own ideas about crop rotation for the hayfields and introducing a small flock of sheep whose wool brought additional income. They built a larger house to accommodate their growing family, though they kept the original cabin as a guest house for when Sarah and Dr. Thompson, now married, came to visit with their own infant daughter. In the quiet of their bedroom one night, as they lay together listening to the peaceful sounds of their children sleeping across the hall, Finn traced the curve of Zuzanna's cheek with gentle fingers. "Do you ever think about Hungary?" he asked. "Miss it?" Zuzanna considered the question thoughtfully. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I miss the mountains, certain foods, the sound of my mother tongue in the market." She turned to look at him, her dark eyes serious in the dim light. "But I would not trade this life for that one, not ever." Finn pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Someday, when the children are older, perhaps we could visit. I'd like to see where you came from, meet any family you might still have there. The thought of returning to Hungary, not as a lonely orphan, but as a woman with a loving husband and beautiful children, brought unexpected tears to Zuzanna's eyes. I would like that very much. Then we'll make it happen, Finn promised, wiping away a tear with his thumb. For now, though, I'm perfectly content right here with you and our little ones. Zuzanna smiled, nestling closer to him. As am I. Outside their window, the vast Wyoming sky spread star-studded and endless above the ranch. They had built together a life neither of them could have imagined when a young Hungarian woman stepped off a train to find rejection instead of welcome, only to discover that what seemed like misfortune was actually the first step toward true happiness. In the years that followed, the story of Finn and Zuzanna Molnár became something of a legend in Silver Creek, how a mail-order bride cast aside for her accent found love with a cowboy who thought her words sounded like music. It was a reminder that sometimes the heart recognizes what the ear cannot. The true worth of a person lies not in how they speak, but in what they say and who they are. And in the Nolan household, that truth was lived every day, as two people from different worlds created a home where both languages were valued, both cultures celebrated, and love was the most fluent language of all.